right, Chris Cooke.
What's up, man?
Thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much.
Let's just jump right into talking about your phone call from JD Vance or the JD Vance team.
Okay.
Because I think that's super interesting. That was something that happened after I had invited you on the show. So in between inviting you and today.
Yes.
So just walk us through, dude, what happened?
I had finished helping out a friend of mine who runs a training company here in the Valley, doing a course of theirs on Saturday afternoon into the evening. And then I took some of the people that attended that course were clients. And we took him to dinner. I took him to dinner, and I was in my truck getting ready to head home. And I got some text messages from a friend of mine who I've known for probably close to 20 years that lives on the East Coast. And I'm like doing the math in my head thinking she's like 3 hours ahead of me. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And she's not a person that ever drunk texts anybody, or me anyway. And I can't text and drive because one, it's illegal. Two, I don't like doing that anyway. It's just weird. And so at a red light, I was like, hey, just give me a call. I've got, 25 minutes in front of me. So she hits me up and she's like, hey, I have a favor to ask. I'm like, what's up? I was like, first off, like, where are you? It's 1 o'clock in the morning in DC. Like, what's going on? She goes, no, I'm in Phoenix right now. I said, okay. She goes, I really don't remember where I am because I've been in 4 states in the last couple of days. And she has a background working in the political space anyway. And she says, I'm here in Phoenix and I need to find capable, competent people to give me some help with lifting, driving in the motorcade for the senator of Ohio and potentially the...
she said senator.
But yeah, because everybody calls him senator. He's still senator, right? He's still senator.
Oh, yeah, I guess. But.
He is, right? So,
yeah.
And then for his motorcade. And I thought to myself a couple of different things at once, like, wow, what a cool opportunity. How is this happening within the timeline of just a couple of days? Because this was Saturday evening. And it was going to be starting on Monday that they needed those people. And I was like, well, I'm down to help. Like, what exactly do you need? So she kind of gave me the con-op, like what was going to go on and how it was going to look, what she could share without going too in depth because of, their OPSEC stuff. And the next thing was the part was like, hey, do you have any friends that could help too? I'm like, all right. And right away, my brain starts to go through like that, that file Rolodex of, okay, it's a short list of people that are here in the Valley.
And this is a big deal. This isn't just like, I'm going to need help moving. I'm going to call a couple buddies to my neighbors.
You got like comfortable shoes?
Very specific, very specific set list here.
Yeah, it's a specific set list, and people that I've worked with in the past in that kind of space. Some of them are not in town, but they get on a plane or whatever the case may be if the conditions were right and amicable for them, obviously, as professionals. And so she kind of gave me the readout of what it was going to look like. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll help. And then she said, I need like 7 or 8 other people too. I'm like, how?
Why? I mean, the question is why?
Yeah,
like,
am I the only one? Like, who else are you calling? And she'd spoken with some of the people on the security side for them and their interaction and working with Secret Service. And I'm going to refer to them as SS instead of saying Secret Service every time. It's not, anybody else, but just them. And so it kind of got the basics put together. Then she put me in touch with the person who was actually on Advance that was here. And we started engaging via text message. And I don't mind texting, but for someone I've never interacted with before, this kind of a level of severity, I wanted to actually talk with them. So he called me on Sunday, and we kind of had a real quick brief without giving too much information away. I don't know if it was so much a bona fides from him, but then he pushed over information to set up vitals and do all the pieces necessary to be engaged in that kind of a space. So I sent all that information over, and I started dialing away, man. If you would have seen my text messages and my calls on Sunday, it was pretty impressive. The list was also impressive, but there were a lot of people that were either already had commitments, had plans, whatever the case may be, didn't like the metrics, didn't like the way that it was seemed to be orientated initially, and also had similar considerations with specifically like understanding that there's been a lot of polarity with, the president or the former president being shot one time, and then, other attempts in that scenario just recently, allegedly. And it kind of caused some concern and consider, like, what are our actual lateral, like, what are our limits left and right? And I gave them as much information as I had, and I pushed those folks to the guy that I had ended up speaking with. So long and short of it, I showed up on Monday at the start point, and that little group of people that they managed to find also assembled. We got a brief, and it was pretty well put together. It was mostly his team that was the direct POC for it. And we had a little bit of interaction with some of the Secret Service folks that were there. And I like to get to places early because it's a friggin' habit. But watching the other people show up, and there were probably 4 other agencies that were there as well in support of the initial effort for the movement piece, which was Monday night, which was just getting them from the plane to the facility they wanted to stay at. It was not a small group. It was pretty big. There's a lot that goes into the planning and the methodology behind the kind of planning. And I can tell you from working with that team for 2 days, he's got a good group of people that work for him. Like, they're switched on. They're very openly communicative. Once you cross that threshold of being, validated, they were open to share what they could with what we had going on, because their plans also fluctuate based on all of the things that the campaign has going on, which is a ton. It is impressive.
Yeah, so you're basically asked by the senator of Ohio, but the vice president,
staff,
hopeful of the United States of America, to pull security detail last minute in Arizona because they're traveling around and campaigning.
That's correct.
And you're called a little bit out of the blue by someone someone trusted, and you're asked to gather 6, 7, 8 people that It's
Also, so I understand. I understand you gave Ryan a call, but where was my call? You didn't call me.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing was that my wife kind of was, because when I'm on the phone and I'm talking with friends, there's a different kind of a tone to that, and so she sees me just doing loud. I like to walk when I don't even wear a step counter. My wife says you should wear a step counter because you walk all over the place when you talk on the phone. But she's doing Sunday stuff, right? Like, it's a Sunday. I'm actually in town. We get a chance to hang out. And about an hour into me making these calls and setting all these things up, she's like, "What are you doing?" And I told her, and she's like, "Okay, 2 things. 1, this is out of the blue. And 2, she goes, the people that you're calling have incredibly extensive experience in this kind of thing. And why aren't these pieces already kind of set in place?"
Well, that's the right question to ask.
The question.
I think
that is the question.
$64,000 question.
Yeah, and
right?
So what I discovered was, because the campaign moves at the speed that it does, and the campaign has certain expectations for the kinds of travel, hey, we have a plan in place, but 18 hours later that plan could change. It makes it very disruptive, I believe, based on what I understood, for them to get people all the time to come out and do that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, don't they have Secret Service agents that are able to do advances? And
yes.
Why would they need extra people on site? I mean, that seems like it could be number one, a potential security risk, right? Like, who are these people? You got to vet them in 2 days. Maybe they're kind of previously vetted a little bit, but who knows, right?
Well,
that seems like
the dive apparently was pretty substantial, because I recently, through work, have been at some sensitive sites, and the check that they pushed kicked back and said, "Hey, this guy's also been at these other places."
So you were pre-vetted, everything was cool. But so what about the other guys where they said, "Hey, find me 6 or 7 guys."
Yeah.
Would they have to go, within a 2-day period, 2-3 day period when the event actually happens?
That's a good question.
How does that get done?
Yeah. Well, when they turned vitals over to the Secret Service, it's not like just passing like a 4473. My understanding is it went a lot deeper than that, even in the short period of time that they have. Now, we can always suggest or question the level of information tracking and sharing between different agencies, because we know that a lot of agencies don't like to share information. But it was my understanding that it was a fairly in-depth full, with the time allotted that they had to be there. And also the caliber of people that did show up. I mean, these are retired senior level law enforcement agencies, federal agency guys that also showed up to help out with this. To answer your question, though, what I also understood, that I'm not saying that is the way that it's done, but what I understood is this is done because the Secret Service only has a certain level of requirement as far as actual assets to be able to support campaign.
And so this came from the Trump campaign.
Correct.
That they wanted added security.
That's correct.
So it wasn't like Secret Service was doing their job, but they wanted more.
That's right.
And they were willing to take, I would say, somewhat of a risk to hopefully get a reward in having this short period of time of vetting people that were not already kind of in government service and had secret clearances.
And that, but previously a lot of them already had been. They had been in government service. They did have clearances. So it was kind of like thankfully the chips fell the way that they did kind of a thing. The people that I was around, I would say 60% of them, they absolutely knew what the op was. They knew what the game plan was. They responded well to the briefs. They didn't have a lot of weird, random, like first day stuff questions, which was super helpful. Made me feel really good because I was also driving a lead vehicle, which is, if you've ever worked in certain types of motorcade experience before,
it's stressful.
It's
very stressful.
That's
the hardest. That's the hardest.
It's one of the hardest ones to run in. Yeah. So the first day movement was super simple, super easy. It was pretty cool because it was all things being equal, it was pretty low vis because it was a pretty easy movement. And the next day was a little different because it was a full day. It was a large movement across town to another location that they had set up. The outpouring of support for Senator Vance was impressive because there were people lining up at that venue at 8 o'clock in the morning. There were hundreds of people outside ready to get into that venue that could only hold a couple hundred people anyway. So it was impressive to see. I didn't get to see any of it because
you're working.
Yeah, you're working, so you don't get to do any of that stuff. But I got to tell you, the professionalism and the commitment from the local agencies that stepped up to help, legit. Like those guys were. They said the guys that they had there throughout my entire experience. One, I have personal relationships with a lot of them because of my job, but they're switched on and they are absolutely an asset. And to the extent where even some of the Secret Service guys that I had some conversations with are like, they like coming here. Like this is a place that they enjoy coming because there is such an outpouring of actual support by people that know their role and know their profession very, very well.
Well, we just talked to Justin Walker, and he had nothing but great things to say about the agency that he worked for. He's a SWAT sniper.
Yep.
And, when you work for some place for 20 years, there's a lot of stuff that you probably don't like. There's and, a lot of times, I don't know if it's just human nature kind of operators, you can get negative about things, right?
Sure.
Because there's a lot of hurry up and wait scenarios and all that. But he had nothing but good things to say about Phoenix PD. So, if that shines through to, being on the job and, all the campaign guys came and saw how those guys operate, you could imagine that they,
I think that it transcends, right? It's those guys show up. I mean, keep in mind too that like the CAT guys are the ones that are under a tremendous amount of scrutiny. I think the Secret Service as a whole is under a tremendous amount of scrutiny, not just interdepartmentally within other federal agencies, but also by the American public. And one of the good things about being connected to that side of the industry is that you hear all the stuff really early. Like I was hearing things, days or weeks before there were actual investigations launched and people are showing up on Capitol Hill. And you have to take that with a grain of salt because sometimes it's hearsay, right? Once it's more than one or two people away from actually being there and seeing it, it's not questionable because the sources that you have are from people that you trust, but it's always taken with a grain of salt. And I think that because the Secret Service is under a tremendous amount of scrutiny, the people that I interacted with were actually badge-carrying, legit Secret Service people. The CAT teams, same thing. Those are Secret Service.
What's the CAT team?
The critical response team, basically the guys that are wearing the all black pieces that are out there doing their thing.
So explain for people, is that like kind of like the special unit of the Secret Service? What do they do versus the people on the detail?
The way that it's described to me is that they're kind of like the the onboard SWAT team for both the immediate response piece as well as the counter interdiction group. That's where you, like in Pennsylvania, you saw the guys up and on the roof line that were both in the sniper counter. Mostly they call them counter sniper positions to manage the depth in the field and the space between the protectee and the venue that they're actually assisting and working in. Those guys were pretty locked on too. They seem to have, their wits about them, so to speak. They got along pretty well, I think, with a lot of the guys that were here from the city that they were, partnered up with. There were some other guys from some other groups there as well that were like ancillary, but their roles in that space were more of like further outer ring perimeter piece and just more guys in helmets and gear to kind of make things look a certain way, which is reasonable. I'm not saying that they weren't capable or weren't ready. I'm not implying that at all, but that their jobs were to just add basically another force multiplier to what the security that was there. On the second day, there were multiple agencies that were assisting because obviously we had to go from one place in the city to another. And as you cross through those different cities, those agencies, if they're tasked with, hey, support this, then their guys get involved as well. And there was a big presence with that, both from like air support to people on the ground to plainclothes to traffic to all that stuff. I mean, God, the motors portion of it alone was probably 20 bikes just running and pushing blocking technique and just making sure that we could keep our flow, keep the little end up at the big end kind of thing.
That's a huge lift in a city like Phoenix.
It's big, man. It's shutting stuff down. Yeah. I saw some pretty wild driving from the heavies, from the armors up front, and from the interdiction groups. It was kind of wild. And you get, the movie screens right in front of you because I'm running lead. So, but it was well done. It was well executed. There weren't any snafus. There were only a couple of things that, you look at here as, hey, possible cars broken down, freaking landscapers are just like,
yeah,
what's going on here? They're just out there cutting bushes on the side of the I-10 kind of thing.
Yeah, but you got to take all that into account.
Got to just deal with it. And the problem is that if you've ever done this kind of thing in a place where you're actively being looked for, or you can only manage one kind of profile because if you go higher than that, then you stick out like a sore thumb and you're going to get targeted. It's remembering, hey, I'm still in the greatest country in the world and the chances are lower, even though the chances are still there, but you have to trust in the people that you're there working with, like in many other parts of your life, and that they're going to do the right thing. And this is going to go as planned. And we have contingencies, but this is going to go smooth. And it did.
So were you kind of like you did the first movement and then you're staying there, you're there in case, let's say they get to the place they're staying and 2 hours later, hey, we need to pick up and go somewhere else. You're just there, or was it like you went home, showed up the next day?
That's exactly what happened. It was a set site. So when they have a set site, this is a hardened place. It's not, they don't need to go anywhere. They don't need to move anywhere. The hotel that they were at was extremely amenable to their conditions and what was going on. To the extent where they kept it so low profile that when we pulled up in there, the people that were at the, living around in that neighborhood and even in that hotel were like, what's going on here? They do it at a place. They manage to keep their details low enough. They don't push any information out there. The news didn't even know they were here, right? Like I came home that night. My wife said that the news has no idea that anybody's even here. Phoenix is a large enough city where you can effectively create those kinds of movements and put those plans in place and execute without it catching too much attention. Like there were no news vehicles there at any point.
It's crazy.
There were no news people there even when we stepped off the next day to head over to the venue. It was just, they just weren't there.
Yeah, so you just go home.
Yeah, went home.
Show up the next day.
Had to go back, had to recert all the vehicles, all safety sweeps, dogs, the whole rigmarole was done again, which is great.
Yeah.
But by then we've, once you do, one gig with somebody or certain people, you kind of hang out with those same people. And that's when I started learning about some of the backgrounds of some of the other guys. Cause a lot of times when you first meet up with people you don't know, there's a little bit of, there's a lot of butt sniffing and who's doing what, who's capable of what kind of a thing. But by the next day it was like, hey man, we're just going to knock this out. It's going to go seamlessly and no issues.
Cool.
So, and I don't know if this is something you can even really talk about, but I think listeners would kind of want to know, So Secret Service, FBI, Phoenix PD, any of those guys, anything that they do during that movement is acting within their job. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That's if there's an event, we call it, right? And they have to take action. That is what it is. They're in the capacity of their job. It is what it is. But you're now getting hired as you're in private security. What's the?
I asked
if
that
there's some
question.
direct action that has to happen.
Yeah.
What's the liability and how does that?
I asked that to my friend that reached out to me, and she assured me that there'd be no legal liability or punitive damage if I wreck a car or I need to get whoever my folks are out of a situation or out of that kind of region. I don't want to say off the X because that seems awfully dramatic, but
well, that's what it is, really. If something happens, that's
yeah.
what it's
Well,
really
I had a
is.
brief discussion with my people the next day because they were a little different. When they got off the plane, they were super jet lagged. They're still working 1,000,000 miles a minute. Every one of those people carries 2 phones. Like there's a ton of stuff that they're still doing. They worked on the plane and now they're in the back of the truck. It's amazing to me, again, having experience in other places where things are a little more dicey. These people have complete trust in the people that are transporting them from place to place. They're still working. They're on the phone. They're on their phones. They're talking on their phones. They're just passengers at that point, which is good. But it's also kind of sad and bad because I sure would like to have, a dude like Ryan riding shotgun with me in case something bizarre pops off, then he can start doing what he knows how to do. And that really wasn't an option for us because of the limited amount of people that they had managed to get processed. At no point in time did I ever get told, yeah, I mean, we had 26 names and it's only the 8 of you. They didn't ever let me know what the ratio of pass fails were. I just had to trust that other people that were in that group that were capable of knocking it out. With regards to responding to any kind of imposed threats, we staged in places and staged in order to, if there needed to be a quick egress, it was lined up and it was staged appropriately. The cool part was the first 4 of us that pulled in, we knew how we were going to stage, and we did. And the POC there kind of walked over and was like, "Oh, you guys are good," and then only had to direct a couple more cars to get to where they needed to be, vehicles where they needed to be. But then once they're inside doing their thing, man, it's funny to watch the fire guys because they're just like, "This overtime is sweet, but man," and they're just kind of hanging around talking. But all of the assets, the people with guns, were still very much still on. You know what I mean? They weren't shouldering weapons, but they were still very close to all the things they needed to be close to should anything need to pop off. So for that part, that level of professionalism, I thought was good. It was well attained to. And they had their own police. The Secret Service has their own police. They're clearly identified as Secret Service police that had other, assets within them from a technical perspective, as well as other things that they have their availability to or access to, so that if things happen, they have ways of defeating certain things. So where it makes it easier for us to make sure we can get everybody we need to away from there and go back to a rally point, basically.
So when you called me, I was in Missouri.
Driving.
I was in Missouri driving. But I was making my way down south, and I was in Houston, Texas on Thursday night, driving into Texas, and I see these lights. I'm getting off the freeway about a block from my hotel, and I'm encountering cop car after cop car and detours. And all of a sudden we pull up to a stoplight, and there's a bunch of cars right before my hotel. And it dawns on me that there's some kind of motorcade going on. And we sat there for 30 minutes. I've never seen so many. I've been in a decent amount of motorcades in my life. I've never seen so many cars in a motorcade. Not only that, it's like they took every single vehicle that had lights in the city of Houston.
Put them in one spot.
Yeah, tow trucks there. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I was interested to the difference between you telling me how the Vance campaign or the Trump Vance campaign needed more people, and then The Kamala campaign was just full. There were so
They probably
many
had ice cream trucks,
cars.
too,
Yeah,
didn't
they
they?
had anything with a blue and red light.
Was
they
there.
had.
Yeah.
And it took them 30 minutes. We sat at the light
To
for
clear an
30
intersection?
minutes to clear an intersection.
It's insane.
Insane. I couldn't believe there was that many cars with lights in the whole city. And I didn't know who it was at first. I didn't know she was supposed to be in Houston. I had no idea. I've been traveling.
Sure.
And I'm like, this can't be something small. I've never seen a motorcade this big. Well, it turns out later that she was there with Beyonce. And I don't know if Beyonce was in the motorcade or not, but was it Beyonce? Who's the other?
Beyonce
It was
was in
Beyonce,
Houston.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, they both come from a middle class family too, right?
Well, and she's not going to pay. She's not going to definitely not pay more taxes because.
Yeah.
well, I just thought it was really interesting knowing what I knew about talking to you just a few days earlier and then seeing this motor and just happened to run into this motorcade.
Yeah, we didn't need tow trucks in our motorcade.
No tow trucks.
You know, when you say that, because it's the first time I'm hearing that from you, my brain, the filters that I have, goes to two places. One, I think her campaign, if I'm not mistaken, fact check it, I think they had $1 billion in their campaign funds for
Massive amount of money.
Kamala Harris. $1
Massive.
billion. Okay. I don't know what the Trump Vance campaign has, but I'm guessing that it's not $1 billion. Two, she's also a sitting active vice president of the United States. What's interesting, though, is I would find it hard to believe if she went to Canada or England or Germany or partner nations with us on a vice president trip, because they're flying around all over the time, all over the place anyway, that would have 40 vehicles and tow trucks and that kind of attention drawn to it. So it has to beg the question about why the disparity, why the difference.
Well, I get she's a vice president. She's going to demand that detail. But just the amount of vehicles. And, you know, the other thing that really is interesting to me is, so Trump's a former president.
Yep.
Trump is now the Republican nominee.
Yep.
He's been attempted assassin twice.
Right.
And it's like he's still scrambling for help, and they've got more vehicles than I've ever seen. So, you know, maybe there's protocol in the Secret Service. I get there is protocol.
There is.
I don't know what it looks like, but it seems like maybe there should be a shift of like need versus like, okay, this position versus this position, because you've got a former president who's been, you know, attempted assassinated twice. Like his life is really in more danger than I think Harris's. And I think you should probably take that into consideration. Now, maybe the government and the government agencies are not capable of making those types of decisions, and maybe making those types of decisions independently without some kind of structure gets you in trouble. I don't know. But I just thought it was really interesting that the dichotomy between these two operations was so different, man. Like so different.
Well, and keep in mind too, threat level assessment is done by a small department within the Secret Service as an agency. And they take into account the hate mail, the emails, the prank calls. They're collecting certain levels of intelligence in a space that's part of the advanced team's job, is to go out and interact with law enforcement and build those partnerships so that they can say, hey, what do you guys track? And like, what's going on? What's happening? And we have to also remember, for context, what part of the country is she in where she needs 30 cars? She's in Texas.
Yeah.
Texas is a pretty red state. And I think, I don't know this to be true, but I think the news is pretty big about putting out where she's going to be ahead of time. Maybe that's to urge her supporters and the populace to show up, to do the due diligence and find out where she's going to be, to go and support that effort. Again, the news didn't even know that JD Vance was here. Like, none of them showed up. Not even the night that we were there, and they weren't there the next morning.
Maybe they're putting it out so that people know that she's actually doing something.
Yeah.
You mentioned going to Europe. She said that she's never been there.
Yeah, right. She's never been there. Right.
Never been
Well,
to
she's been at the
Europe.
border now, what, once? Maybe twice. Maybe didn't she go back to Texas for like an hour and a half?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thank God AOC went to the border.
Yeah, all right. That
we
was
needed
necessary.
But she did. And she cried. Didn't she hold the fence
cried.
and cry? And they took some pictures and then she left. Yeah. So the disparity in the differences is interesting, man. Although I will tell you that if the Secret Service wanted to learn more about, and maybe I think it would be a lot easier for the Secret Service to allow these kinds of figures to check the box to have their own private guys. Because I know I was texting with one of my buddies on the way in here about what he's been up to lately and what he told me he was doing. I'm like, that's awesome, because there are extremely well-placed, extremely knowledgeable people who have done this kind of work for a career that could be employed to come out and make sure that those protectees, those principals stay safe. That's what he does right now privately for popular people, for rock stars, for friggin', people that are in the public space and the public eye on a regular basis that get all kinds of horrific things sent to them. So I don't know. The problem is that the expectation is that it's supposed to be provided by the government, protect them.
Right.
But how much protection was really going on with a person who we know now has been set up for potentially being assassinated twice?
Is there some sort of protocol against? So I know you had pulled security for Bush in Pakistan. Mm-hmm. Is there some sort of thing in America where you can't have, hey man, we got a Ranger unit or whatever, send them with him, because obviously we don't have enough Secret Service to handle the threat? That maybe they have their office of threat going, okay, we'll send him 14 guys plus 3 cars, and clearly that's not enough. He's been attempted twice.
Right.
So is there anything where they can? Is there hey man, we need more. Okay, well we got a Ranger unit that we can send with them. We got a Force Recon unit, something like some special ops guys that, like, these dudes are every bit, if not more qualified than your average Secret Service agent.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know about the militarization involvement with regards to using them in that capacity. I think you can look for information out there that's on the web right now from guys that came from certain very tip of the spear groups that are involved in the protective level piece, not just internationally, but also here to a certain degree. I know that's a thing that's out there. But I got to tell you, I'd be a little disappointed that if every time we decided some things were a little bit sketchy for a person that is a public figure within our government, that immediately the military gets spun up, because I think that turns it into more of a military look as opposed to
and
saying,
the military is not supposed to be operating.
They're not supposed to be doing that on American soil,
and then it looks like you're like using the military for your. I mean, that's kind of the things that Hitler did and Stalin did. You turn these small, special forces agencies into your own
private little
army.
It's dangerous.
And that's a dangerous
it's a slippery slope, man. Look at Nicaragua, look at Panama, look at Venezuela, look at China, look at North Korea. That's exactly what those people do. Filipinos, even in the Philippines, that happened. Like, that's a slippery slope, which is why I was listening to another podcast and listening to Eric Prince speak about, there are people out there that have been doing exactly this kind of thing for 2 decades, 3 decades. They have the knowledge capability. The problem is hiring private forces, private security to execute all of those kinds of objectives, is that ultimately, where does their protection, where does their liability end, right? If you got, Ryan with his experience he has, he's now licensed by the state or licensed by his company to go out and provide these services. If something kicks off and he has to, unfortunately do what he needs to do to protect that principle, and he kills somebody, he's an American citizen. He's a former all the things, but he killed an American citizen in the defense of life for somebody else. And that works great in some states, right? But what about in states that defend yourself thing is scrutinized? Right. If you were doing as a private security guy doing security in Texas or Arizona or Florida or, Montana, I think it's going to be viewed differently from a litigation standpoint than it would be if you're in California. I've done security stuff in California before, and it sucks because you're very limited in what you're able to not only do your job more efficiently with, but ultimately defend yourself with. And that's a little suspect. That makes it a little difficult.
Yeah, I think if you're a government employee like the Secret Service, you can kind of operate the same way. You have some kind of doctrine that you operate under, and you're part of the government, so it's understood that that's your job state to state. As a private security person, I just feel like there's so much liability. I mean, look what happened to Blackwater after I think it was Obama got in and they finally just got rid of Blackwater completely. Blackwater was a great asset.
Huge asset.
It's a huge asset.
Huge fan of Blackwater.
And they just didn't like that private army feel. I mean, I kind of get it, but at the same time, they were efficient and they were good at what they did. And they brought really, capable people into the mission. As I was in the teams during that time when Blackwater became really big, and the one thing, there's a lot of controversy between us and them, pay and all that stuff. But the one thing that we could always say as the military guys is like, we have support.
Yep.
Like if we got in a bad situation, there will be helicopters
Little
coming
Bird
for
showed
us.
up,
Yes.
dropping ammo.
You couldn't say that about Blackwater. They were kind of on their own. So like you had to know, I'm getting paid a lot, but I also could be left high and dry. So that might be the same issue if something happens on the X, like you said, here in the United States, doing a Secret Service type detail, and you're private security, like maybe something serious happens, and where's your support? Is the military going to come in and back you up if they need to, or some kind of government agency going to come in and back up a private security? Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, I knew that going in.
Yeah.
But the friend that asked me to help, I've got a great relationship with her. She's a friend, and she was in a bit of a jam from the way that she described it. So I wanted to assist that. It was also maybe just get the experience and see what it's like, to have some good takeaways to it. And it was just I guess maybe not doing my part, but I believe in their message. And if me being there was as an asset was a multiplier to making their day or their operation, their gig go a little smoothly, then I was happy to volunteer my time to do that. Ultimately,
yeah, it's a cool opportunity for sure. I mean, and to be a person who is trusted, has the experience to be called for a detail like that, it's going to make you feel good.
Well, it was a neat experience, and I got to meet some people there that I know that now that live in the valley that are of similar cloth. Mm-hmm. It never hurts to meet more people like that to kind of open up your own community a little bit more, which is kind of cool. I got asked to do the Trump one immediately afterwards, and for that one I declined. I had some other stuff. I had other plans going on, plans that were important to my wife that we had made with some friends, weeks in advance, and it was tough because I came home and talked with her about it and said, "Hey, me and 3 of the other, of 11 people got pulled to the side and said, hey," and this was with some Secret Service people there, said, "Hey, we want you to, can you come back? We got Trump coming in." And again, mind blown. How does Trump not have
exactly.
an army of people that are going around with? And I think it's because the way that the campaign structure or the policy is laid out, that Secret Service designates a certain amount of capable assets to do maybe a larger bubble, but the transportation of the campaign people and the organization and safety aspect of those people falls upon the campaign to
let's think about that for a second. So you're Kamala Harris, you're running for president, you're the vice president, you have all of your detail paid for.
Yep.
She never has to put a dime into her own detail.
What work has she done in 6 months, 8 months? Like what votes has she been
probably
a part of?
Nothing.
Like
probably
what
not. I don't
is she
know,
aware
but probably
of?
nothing. She's probably been
according
campaigning.
to her, all of it. She's been in all of those decisions. She's been
unless they're bad. Which, yeah. But Trump, he's got to pay for extra detail. I mean, technically didn't pay you guys.
Yeah,
right.
That's correct.
It was told to you that it was a job, unpaid job, right?
Yeah, and that was the other part of it too, was because I'm reaching out to some of these guys that are here or local that are friends of mine, and they're like, "Wait a minute, what's the last part?" It was like, "Hey man, it's unarmed," and you can swallow that because you're here in the United States, even though I carry a gun every day, and most of the people that I know carry a gun every day. Not because you necessarily need to, but you have the right to. And it just helps me, it's just a thing that you like putting on your pants. I've been doing it for most of my adult life, is carrying a firearm in some form or shape or capacity. So that right there was like, hey man, this is weird. Like we can't really. And then again, on day 2, meeting up with everybody early in the morning, waiting for 4 hours until we kicked off, having the discussion with these are other people from other federal agencies. They're like, hey man, what's with the no gun thing? Like we all kind of talked about it. And one of the guys from a very prominent 3-letter agency said, dude, first off, imagine what you would bring in a truck with you to make sure that everybody's cool. they don't need the optics of, and the vehicle that you're in with the people that are in your vehicle to see all of that stuff. They probably don't experience it every place else. And it would also cause them maybe to be a little bit more concerned if that was, what's that? That's a really awesome short-barreled rifle setup. Like, that's crazy. Why do you have that? Kind of thing. And making them uncomfortable could cause more problems than good. And we were surrounded by some, like I said, some super talented, very capable folks that I was, confident in their skill sets.
Who had guns.
Who have lots of
armed.
who are very, very good at what they do. And so I knew that going in because I had touched some other people in some other places and certain agencies in the Valley about this. And I had a better understanding of what was going on. I didn't share that with other people because I didn't know those other people until I showed up that morning, or rather that afternoon on day one. But the whole no pay part was the limiter factor. Was like, hey, dude, if this was for you, I'm in. Like, one guy was like, I'm getting on a plane. I'm leaving Cody right now. Like, I'm in. But it's not for you. It's just for somebody else. And I gotta be honest, if you're really good at something, you don't do it for free.
Right.
Because you have that experience that costs you time, heartache, maybe blood, maybe a marriage, whatever, that you've learned those skills from. So, and they shouldn't have to do it for free.
Well, even if you're not paying the people, right? So you guys weren't paid. You guys just volunteered your time, which was awesome. But there's still associated costs with having you, like the vehicles. I don't know if they're Secret Service vehicles, but probably not. If they want extra stuff, extra protection, they probably need to provide all the assets and everything else, right?
They did.
So what we already know. So I heard this the other day. When Trump ran against Hillary ended up with about $500 million more than he did in campaign funds. And Kamala is not that big, but it's approaching that much. By the time it's all said and done, she'll be close to $500 million
In more money
than him. Andy's got to pay for his. I mean, the dude travels everywhere. The guy never sleeps. It seems like he's
does
everywhere.
3 states in one day. Like,
how much money is he dumping just on his own security versus Kamala Harris, who drives around in these 30-minute long convoys?
Tow trucks.
Man. It's like you got sirens, dude. Come be a part of my security detail. So
yeah,
it's interesting to start to parse out like what has to go on during a campaign and where you have to who spend their money, because money is a huge part of it. You see on the TV how much money people have or the candidates have versus how many ads they run, how many ads you see, because they're all back. Like especially right now, there's ads everywhere. Yeah. So if you see 2-to-1 Harris versus Trump ads, you just know that she's got more money, and now they actually have to spend some money on the Secret Service or on the detail, which is just, man, it's hard to swallow. I guess.
I think that's what Trump was always really good at, though, was you don't see a ton of his commercials. You'll see some commercials from like another PAC that's kind of supporting him. Sure. Say his, but he's always been good at like being the boots on the ground, man, connecting with the people. And that was like, I much rather that than, I'm just going to see an ad that I probably don't believe anyway, but he's on the ground, which to your point, he's all of that money that he's spending. Like, he probably can't run that many ads. It's not that he doesn't want to, but he can't because he's traveling. I mean, dude, that plane he has is huge. He's going to all different states. How much does it cost to fill that thing up just in a day?
And Vance has his own plane too.
Standby, like.
Yeah, it's JD. He has his own plane too. And it's also, keep in mind too, the campaign is a business in some senses, right? Trump is a good business person. People are going to say he wrecked businesses. He could file bankruptcy, all these other things. Sure. But he's gotten to the place that he is because he was good at certain types of businesses. And you have to look at it at an operating sheet. Right? You got your profit and loss sheet statement right there. Like, what are we going to pour our money? What are we going to put our money into that we see the best value? And to your point, him getting on a plane to go to 3 states in one day, to pack venues, to speak to people, he believes is more impactful than having a 1 commercial versus 3 commercial ratio. And I think the context and the quality and the message in the advertisements on television is also interesting to see the disparity, the differences in them. I, for one, would rather hear explain your policy, explain how you're going to achieve what you're suggesting. Don't just blanket statement stuff, this is what we're going to do, because what it sounds like to me in the long run is just more bread and circus. Right? Let's give them bread and circuses. Well, the people are dying. Bread and circus. people are really banged up, dude. Where Empire is so big, we're having these connectivity issues. More bread and circus. And that's not really, I think, a positive way to approach. And what's definitely not helpful is as soon as you find a chink in the armor of the other campaign, they just throw tons of ads into exaggerating a statement that was made or throwing mud. People don't want to do that, man. I was thinking about the other day, if the three of us could develop an app that you could slide an SD card in the side of your television, that the moment a political ad came on, it self-muted, we would be
billionaires
buying an island together. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I think disenfranchised people are with this. I mean, when did you guys start seeing the ads come up? Like, how many months ago was it?
It's
July?
Yeah, it's been a few months.
Summertime?
Yeah.
Earlier
right?
than normal. Yeah.
They're really ramped up now. It's like every single ad
because
space.
it's crazy. It's melee, dude. It's
Yeah.
melee season. So it's what can they do bad? Let's capitalize. And the idea that they have the production capability behind building a commercial to extrapolate or try to take advantage of a misconstruence of a comment that was made, and now it's on television days later. Like, how long do you think it takes Chevy to build Corvette commercials? Like, months.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you'd imagine it takes it some time.
A new Toyota that's coming out, the new Tundra or whatever. How many months or years did it take to take that footage, edit it? Like, I see some media sides and marketing sides with the business, with my job currently, and that stuff takes a while to do. Yeah. Trump says something that could be misconstrued or not understood because it's not described in context, and there's an ad for it on television during the evening news like 3 days later. Forget about motorcades, man. How much does that cost?
Well, probably not a whole lot when you control the media outlets.
Yeah, well,
you're probably getting a
you have
hefty
certain
discount.
Partnerships in place.
Hefty discount.
That's a bad. I didn't think of that.
But for the average person, yes, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well, they're back to calling him Hitler. I heard a really interesting piece the other day about how she's having a really hard time with actual policy traction. Well, because she doesn't really sing
how to do it.
She doesn't know how to do it. She doesn't know how to speak. So it's kind of like the last ditch effort for her to go back and do personal attacks, Hitler attacks, Nazi attacks. And that's kind of what you're seeing in the last 10 days or so. That is I think the Hail Mary that they're throwing.
Well, I look at that and go, well, tell me something that you haven't already told me. The Hitler thing, cool, man. Done that, been there, done that. I don't believe it. Just tell me something new. If you're going to try to convince me, you've already used that. You used that bullet a long time ago. Tell me something new. But she's got absolutely nothing.
She's got Beyonce.
Well, the funny thing is, you think about it, right?
J-Lo.
Yeah.
You have kids. I have kids. You have kids?
Nope.
Okay. So, well, I guess in marriage too, sometimes when you get into a little bit of a tiff, a little bit of an argument, and this is human nature, but you see it mostly with kids. You come home, house is destroyed. You look at one of your kids and go, "What happened here? What the heck, man? You should see what Bo did. You should immediately
deflection.
Hold on. Yeah, exactly.
That's a human nature.
And so that's what's going on right now. She's realizing that she's been outclassed. She has nothing to offer. So it's, insults. That's it. That's why I'm going to just resort to insults because I don't have anything of value.
Which, as an American, I got to tell you guys, I am really disappointed that with as big as this country is, as many great Americans that this country absolutely possesses, that to a certain extent that this is the best we can do. These two people are the best that we have to offer. That's disappointing. It's unfortunate. I don't know all of the DNA behind why this is what it is. You could put on your tinfoil hat and have reasons. You could put on, policy review and study. You could go back 40, 50, 60 years to, hey, this stuff has been planned. This is the recipe that the infamous they have been planning forever. This level of discourse, this discontent, all these things. But as a person who likes to find information places outside of what you're regularly exposed to, if you happen to be into that kind of thing, it's a little upsetting. Like this is the best. This is the best we got. And I think what happens is when you run into situations where the polarity becomes so wide, the extremes become so wide that you force a country of people to pick one extreme or one way of thinking or another without any opportunity to truly sit down, have a conversation, understand that there will be disagreement, find commonality, build the relationship, understanding that the goal is to be a better place for the 360 million people that are in this country that are expecting you as a leader to lead. You don't need to make all the policy, but you have to have people underneath you that work for you willingly to help craft and create that policy, keeping in mind that it needs to be good for a majority of the people that are in your country. And I think that it's gotten to the point where people are just so tired of it. Like, I don't watch regular television. My wife and I watch a lot of YouTube stuff that's on long after the news is over, so you can skip through all the commercials and all the BS. And the messaging is psychologically angled in a very specific direction to create a sense of urgency to do this or do that. There is a created sense of despair. There is a created sense of, oh my God, look what's going to happen. It's always if you look at the news, it's always the bad news out of a 30-minute program, which is only about 17 minutes long, to give you an idea how much advertising has a part of that. It's 15 and a half minutes of everything is shit. Everything is on fire. Yeah. Everything's bad. And they leave you at the end of it with a very interesting sales thing that happened back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Like, no matter how bad it is, the Great Depression, look how great somebody else is doing. And this is that little story at the end that makes everybody feel good, right? And it's interesting psychologically how it gets people on this roller coaster of lows of, God, that was terrible. God, that was terrible. That was terrible. And psychologically, the brain is like, this is really bad news. Like, why are we watching this? At the end, they hit you with the tearjerker or the paraplegic athlete or the kid that sold his Pokemon collection to raise money to help his dog, and now there's a GoFundMe that made it. He's got $25,000. His dog is fixed, and he gave money more to other people. Those are great, heartfelt stories. So your brain does this, and at the end it goes, yeah. It's like being in a teenage relationship, man. And we've all learned that as cool as those might have been back when we were teenagers, that sucks. Like, I don't think that's a healthy way to live. And so for me, I'm disappointed with this is.
Well, do you think
this is the best we got?
Do you think as consumers we drive our own news? Because it's all, I mean, if you believe that the news organizations are there to solely make money, and that's one of their driving factors, and most of the news organizations are corporate owned, so
right.
They need to make money, right? Their shareholders want them to make money. Do you think it's driven by money, and what they're doing is they're just catering to what the consumer is actually how they're tuning in? Or do you think they're pushing certain things? I mean, it would be hard for me to imagine how they could push certain things. I mean, it's probably a little bit of both, right? They push certain things, but they have to also get the viewership at the same time. So they got to cater a little bit to what people want. And I do believe that people are more attracted to fear than they are to like good news.
I think that's because it's a conditioning effect. You know, if you can meter out controlled chaos, think about what you get to be when you find a solution. It might not be the best solution, but any solution. You then become a savior. You're a godsend, and you're a guy that knows how to think and get stuff fixed, even though it doesn't fix the actual problem, right? Let's use the border as an example. We all live in Arizona. The border is it's a big topic for people that live here, especially if you've seen it affect your community. And it's bad. If you know that it's bad and it's terrible and it's terrible and it's terrible and it's terrible and it never seems to get better, and now it's drugs, it's sex trafficking, it's human trafficking, we don't know who's coming to this country, although some groups do, and it's not good, of who's here, who's legit here right now. And there's not the bandwidth to manage all that information. You can have somebody swoop in and go, well, we're going to put more people down there. That's a response. That's a metered response to absolute chaos. Whereas, I mean, this may be a little barbaric, but my frame of thinking is, no, man, you tell the Army Corps of Engineers and private companies to sit at a table and come away with an action plan that in 6 months, there is a demilitarized zone that expands from the Gulf of Mexico to the coast of California. You have 6 months to build it. And it costs what it costs, and we'll figure it out. And there's going to be some oversight to it so things don't go completely bananas, but get them to partner up and execute. And I'm talking about landmines, concertina wire, specific points of entry, if not military controlled, then very strictly controlled by certain government entities that are not rent-a-cops, that are there to treat it like you are crossing the border in Berlin from East to West Berlin in the 1980s. And if you set that up and go, you got 6 months, go. That's a fix to the chaos. Because once we have at least that up, that's the holes in the dam have been plugged not by fingers because you got cannonball-sized holes. And now we can turn around and look inward and go, okay, who's here that needs to go? Because once those people are gone, just traveling across the desert, and I've been down there, dude. I've spent time in Arivaca and those places and seen the stuff firsthand. At least it's a stop to that chaos.
And it would probably cost a little bit less than what we've sent to Ukraine already.
It's a possibility, man. I'm not an engineer. I couldn't begin to tell you, but I had friends of mine that were contracting down there that were trying to get me to come down there to work with them. What they were being paid per day to overwatch on surveyors. So the surveyors weren't getting freaking kidnapped, or you didn't because the surveyors pushed out about almost a mile ahead of where the actual wall was being built. And the biggest issues they had from a security perspective were coming across they call them freightways. They're like freeways, but they're freightways because they're pulling product and people through certain sections that just on Google Maps were difficult to see because of the washes, the navigation of the geography, whatever the case may be. And they didn't want surveyors to just come across like, this is a human highway right here. This is going to get hot real quick because certain groups down there, the cartels are going to want to go, hey, we got to build another place or push our lateral over a little bit. But let's get some more through here while we can because we need to, even though we know that wall is a mile away and a couple of days away from getting here. So I think the media does have a lot to do with it, man. And it's unfortunate because I think it's been said many different times. I'm a big fan of Denzel Washington. I like listening to his responses to some absolutely ridiculous questions. There's whole videos on it, like collections you can see on YouTube and on the internet. When did we lose journalism as the focus for what the news was supposed to be, right? Across this country, we built a system of telegrams, right? We put up wires on poles that went off into the vastness of the Great West to sit there and some dude reading the ticker tape thing, you know. Do you think there was just opinion that was coming across those things, unless it was a personal message? It was news. It was actually what was happening. It was the journalism. When did we lose that? And when did it become more sensational? Was it because it became more sensational? Like you could be at the drugstore, at the supermarket and see like the Sun, you know, yet more aliens discovered and all the, what do they call those? The tabloids.
That was, yeah.
But you knew you were getting into. Mm-hmm. Like you knew it was a tabloid. You're going to take that home. You're going to read it and throw it away or use it for kindling or whatever the case may be. It was just fun to read because it was entertainment. At what point did we lose the idea that the purpose of journalism is to tell a story, and it was either fiction or nonfiction, and it was called out as fiction or nonfiction?
Probably as they realize that there's a lot of money, 24-hour news cycle, there's money in news.
Advertising, yeah.
And power, lots of power. Yeah. You know, when you're rubbing elbows with the most powerful people in the government, that's a big deal. Like people love that, you know. Not sure what the year, but Operation Mockingbird in the 60s was a collaboration between the media and the CIA.
Right.
And it still goes on today. But that was a known entity from the church committee that uncovered that operation amongst many of other operations. But we know that there's collaborations between the CIA and the media. Mm-hmm. And that's power, man. I mean, can you imagine you're in the media and you're like the CIA approaches you and you're like, hey, I need to do this.
Yeah.
Especially if you're young and influenced, you just don't have a good grounding. You're just eager to be a journalist, and the CIA's court, you're like, man, I made it. You know, the CIA, I'm making money. Yeah, you're easily influenced, I think.
Yeah. I think it's also worth noting, though, to your point, at what point in time did the government find more value in whatever power that word means, as opposed to doing their job, which is serving the people that elected them?
I think I have a lot of thoughts about this, but there's a machine. Mm-hmm. There's a machine, and when I say people like think of a machine like a real machine, but it's SOPs. If you've ever been in a business or run a business or been a part of a business, you have procedures that you have to follow. And these SOPs, this machine gets built over a long period of time. And typically you make small adjustments to this machine. And oftentimes they get made in favor, I believe, of people, like financial favor. They are benefiting the people who are at the top of that machine. They're benefiting them financially. And so as people come and go, they just kind of are a cog in that machine. And now these cogs can make small tweaks here and there. Like President Obama was a great speaker. He had all this attention on him, and he was a powerful cog, but he was a cog too. Kamala Harris is a cog. She's not a very powerful cog. She doesn't have the same attributes that he had, but you're still a cog in the machine, and you can scrape off money from all these different places. And the people in the government have created this machine to benefit them. And whoever comes in, it doesn't matter. You just get placed. And I think it's money driving that. I think we saw that with COVID in the pharmaceutical industries. We see that all over the place.
Sure. Power
is interesting too, because people like to be in charge of other people. It makes them feel big, makes them feel important. Like if you've seen some of Kamala Harris's old tapes of her talking about how she's treated some of the people that she's put away, it's insane. You can tell she's like the power has gone to her head. Like she has all this power over people and she's going to use it. And like, there's no thought about like, maybe I shouldn't do this. It was like, I'm here, I've made it, I can control people. And there's a lot of, I think, if you're not grounded by something like, I'm a Christian, and if I try to go back to my Christian roots and I understand that that's not healthy, like people can be grounded by certain things like that. But if you don't have anything to be grounded by, you can easily abuse your power. And that, I think, is what happens over time. Where 60, 70 years ago, where I think there was some corruption in the government, because the media was controlled, there wasn't a whole lot that we knew about it, but it was a lot. I think overall it was a lot less than now. When you have this government that's just constantly churning through in the background and making decisions for themselves and turning that machine towards their own profit, I think that's when you get in, that's where you get where we are now. And back to your point, we have two terrible candidates.
Options.
Yeah. One of them is a machine cog, plain and simple. The other one is a bull in a china shop trying to break the machine.
And that's why they're so terrified of them.
That's why they're terrified of them. And I believe that's why we have those two. It's not an accident. Yeah. Are they forcing like Kamala in? Yeah. Could it be Buttigieg or could it be Newsom? Yeah. Any of those cogs will work. But Trump, even though he's a big dumb animal, I think people, they don't know how to articulate it, I think, but they know there's something wrong. They know that on the back end of this government, there's something broken. And they want it broken. They want it broken to pieces and rebuilt, because that's kind of what the point that we're at. And that's why I think we have the two candidates we've got.
It's got a cancer.
Yes.
It's got a cancer that's metastasized. It's gotten bigger. It's gotten, for some people, worse. For other people have benefited off of it, and unnaturally and apparently not illegally so. But it needs to be fixed. There's an app I follow. It's called Unusual Whales, and he does a lot of financial reporting. And he helped start an app that allows you to take money and literally it matches the stock changes and pushes. Have you heard of this?
Yes. Yeah.
To Nancy Pelosi, who's up like 93% in any given period of quarterly time, which, what does that do to the people that are on Wall Street who are betting against the stock market or running mutual funds who, if they're lucky, are 11, 12, 13%, maybe as high as 17, and they're the Black Rocks, they're whatever. How is it possible that it's legal for her? It's not just her, by the way. There's a lot of people with R's after their names. She's not even the best. But it's become such public knowledge that it's like, yeah, man, that's what happens. You come into Congress and you spend 40 years there.
Making $140,000
Making $140,000 a year with better health care than anybody else in the government.
Right.
And then if you did one term or 20 terms, when you leave, you get a retirement for the rest of your life. That is bizarre. It is bizarre to me. Yeah. Understanding that, the picture that you had on that wall, those dudes that sat around in that room and risked their lives, their families' lives, the livelihood of their friends, their other fellow farmers, their fellow lawyers. They risked all that to finally tell somebody, hey man, not anymore. And if we have to, we'll find the money to hire an army and tell you not anymore.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But when I travel internationally, man, I have these conversations with people from other countries because they're blown away by Americans, right? Especially in friendly countries. They're blown away. Unfriendly countries or not as developed countries, like, yeah, whatever, you guys are crazy, doing your own little thing on your little island. But our country is super, super young in the grand scheme of things. And as in business, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay. Make a mistake. Get kicked in the nuts. But it's how you learn from it, react from it, and move forward in business that makes the difference between being a viable business that has a future and productivity and profitability to continue that versus one that just folds up shop and goes away. Well, this country isn't in a place where it can just fold up shop and go away. We have to make mistakes. And I think we've been making some pretty big mistakes from a government perspective over the past 40 to 60 years that's landed us in the position that we're in now, where we're considering a bull in a china shop to come back for another 4 years to try to get the fires in the engines that are happening right now out, maintain stability of that aircraft, and freaking try to smooth it out to find us and point us in a general direction of some place we can land safely and hopefully realign and fix things.
Do you think we can do it? We can do that without breaking the whole thing? Do you think we can course correct?
I sure hope so. I sure hope so, because I don't think that if you don't go out there and look for the information and you don't go out there and to look to see what else is going on the rest of the planet, because of our involvement with so many things on a global scale, I don't think that Americans recognize and realize how truly involved we are in so much stuff at a global level. And it's like there's a duality to it. If we just shut the doors, fixed our own house, what's the point of shutting the doors and fixing the fire at your house if your whole neighborhood's on fire? Cool, Ryan's house isn't burned down, but all of his neighbors' houses are burned down, and they're going to have people that are going to need help. Or maybe the fire does keep licking at your house, and sooner or later, that's not going to be a great place to be either. It has to be, who has the worst fire? Let's all work together and fix that, and then we'll work through together to
now,
support each
are you
other.
speaking specifically about, when you're talking about houses, are you speaking about countries?
Yeah. Yep.
There's a big argument to be made about focusing on just making ourselves healthy. And if the other countries can't figure it out, like there's going to be, there's suffering. We can't solve everybody's problems. Like by solving everybody's problems, we destroy ourselves.
Correct.
So it's kind of like when you're in the airplane, you put your mask on first, then you put your child's mask on.
Yeah.
And it's like, we have to put our own mask on right now, I feel like. Mm-hmm. And yeah, should we have allies? Sure. Should we be friendly? Yes. Should we try to help when there is injustice? Yes. But you have to look in the mirror first and make sure that you are doing what you need to do for your own people before you try to spend however many hundreds of billions of dollars that we've spent in Ukraine and fighting proxy wars. Like, we need to be focusing on our own people. We got veterans who are homeless. We got a huge homeless crisis. We got the borders porous. We've got all kinds of problems here, yet we're sending money overseas like it's no problem.
We just print it.
And people say, well, that's not really in the big scheme of things. It's not that much money. Okay, maybe you're right. I don't know. Yeah. Like, I think it sounds like a lot of money to me, but maybe you're right. But it's the principle. It's the principle. Like, you're just sending money everywhere else. Like, you could have sent that $100 million to some place in the United States that needed help with their homeless crisis, or
like North Carolina.
Like North Carolina is a great example.
Or Florida after 2 hurricanes in 3 weeks.
Well, and they're sending all this money with zero accountability.
Yeah,
they're sending it there. They have no idea what's going on with it. They have no idea what's happening, who's got it, so it's $160 billion worth of taxpayer dollars that we paid taxes on. People in Florida paid that same tax. People in North Carolina paid that same tax. It's a little bit of an insult to go, hey man, we need to help these people. Sure, okay, maybe, but I actually pay those taxes. I paid for that. You need to help me first.
You paid for the $1 billion worth of stuff that was left behind in Afghanistan too.
Yeah. You're paying to fund terrorist organizations
right now.
We're funding Al Qaeda.
It's $86 million a month, something like that.
That's the Taliban. in Afghanistan, but we're also funding Al-Qaeda, and we've done it, and it's been open. It's been an open issue. It's been reported that that we've over the last 10 years we've funded different terrorist organizations to run proxy wars against governments or factions of a country that we are in disagreement with. We are trying to run the world.
And then what always happens with that? They
doesn't usually end up working out so well.
They always come back at us. You know, Bin Laden was our guy. Hey, man, hey, take care of the Russians for us. Okay. Yeah. I'm coming for you when I'm done, just so you know.
You could taught me all these things.
What do you think, you know, the argument from the CIA would be, well, if we kind of get the government we want in power, we're not going to have to go to war with them later. Versus let the people speak in that country, and they may elect some dictator, who knows, and maybe there's a civil war, who knows. There could be all kinds of chaos to come from that. But the CIA narrative would be, well, if we just go in there and fix it now, it'll be better for us in the long term. What do you think about that?
So I think that people need to recognize, or at least be open to the perspective, that the agency for a long time has a mindset within certain parts of it that is the expectation that we can always make little adjustments and get the output that we're expecting. What people have to realize is that anyone that has a plan for a specific outcome at the same time is also creating contingency plans. So it's not just that you're pouring a bunch of money and assets into one particular direction of a choice change. At the same time, they're having plan B, plan C, plan D. And that it costs that much more. It takes that much more time, effort, and energy to do it. And when inevitably what seems to happen is when plan A doesn't work after we threw a boatload of money at it, then we go to plan B, which is usually a directional shift, a change in a different way because things have changed. And it's the perception that human beings have over this word called control to understand what you truly control and what you don't. And people would say, hey, Ryan, to your point, we're going to back out of that country. We're going to let them figure it out. We're going to let them have fair and free elections. I think that humankind has always been corrupt to a certain degree, but now that corruption has become almost mainstream because people do it and they seem to get away with it, there's not a whole lot of accountability to that there's not fear of corruption. Like, what country was it was it Venezuela? Argentina, where the guy was told that he didn't win. And he's like, yeah, too bad. I won. I know that I won. We did our own counting. This is how it is. And we're going to start making some changes here. And he was seen as the bull in the China shop thing. And guess what? He fired like half the federal government, like within a couple of days a couple of weeks of being there. And look at them now. They have new trade opened up with a variety of different countries. Like, they're moving in a direction that the people that didn't want him there were willing to burn elections down and make it be the first to the media with not the right story, but the wrong story. And, he lost by a landslide. He's like, no, we didn't. You'll see. And if the military has to get involved, I think that this idea of controlling everybody else's intentions and everybody else's pathways to growth and even failure is a mistake. I don't think that it's healthy. Yeah. It's not healthy for us. You guys might have had people that you knew throughout your life that historically made really poor decisions and then would wonder, why am I here? Why is this happening? Oh, dude, it's your third DUI, kind of a thing. This is why you're in a place where you're at right now. Right. Like, I can't be there to drive the car for you every time you get shit-faced and decide to go drive. But the problem is of not doing it at a nationalist scale, right? If you turn into complete nationalists and you isolate yourself from everybody else because you got to do your own housework, the implications from other people who've decided and see that as weakness can join up and go, hey, man, this country's been pissing us off for a while. They've kind of closed their doors. They're focusing on them. That's cool. Now's our chance. Now's our chance to go throw toilet paper in their trees and hit the house with eggs because they're not hanging around outside and they're not being friends with everybody else. So it's a balance. It's a tough place to be for sure. To answer your question, I was thinking about what we were talking. Can we fix this without breaking it? I really hope so. It's going to take change that is something I think that this country, I hope, is ready for. It's going to require buy-in because it's going to create pain points. If Elon comes in, we have 468 agencies, which is mind-blowing.
Insane.
By the first 30 days, half of them were going to be not agencies. Yes, but let's stipulate for a second. Let's say every agency has 10,000 people in it, right? What are those people going to do for a living? Did you just prop up a further welfare state because those government agencies lost half their people? They're going to file for unemployment. What's that going to cost? Maybe it causes us a reason to go, hey, maybe a couple more billion to Ukraine's a bad idea. We got to pay for these people not to be working for the government anymore. Yeah. I lived in Northern Virginia. People never say they're from D.C. because no one really is unless you were actually born and raised there, right? They're there for the government that happens to be installed at the time. And they live in these concentric rings outside of it based on distance, whatever their job is. You work at the Pentagon, you live in Fredericksburg. You work in D.C., you live in Alexandria or Arlington, or shortly outside of that. Those people aren't working anymore. There's nothing else to do in Washington, D.C., unless you're working at a law firm or a government contracting company. Well,
to your point, we've gotten ourselves into this mess.
Yeah.
If we cut all these jobs, you can't, as much as I'm not a person for safety nets, you may have to support them for a while. And if you cut all their jobs, then that's cutting a ton of money. So the people who can't get jobs, you can maybe support them for a few months.
60%.
Yeah.
60% of their income, that's going to be their...
no pension, no.
Yep.
So
it's gonna make a lot of people really unhappy.
It's going to, but it has to. Sometimes you just have to do it. It's gonna piss people off. People are gonna be hurt for a while, but you've got to do it. You've got to get rid of these never-ending government agencies and bureaucracy that just bog our system down, and we all pay for it in taxes. I mean, we talked about it too. It's one thing if we're spending money on things that matter, and even if we have to go to war, spending money on something, but it's the rounding errors. It's the sending money to places we didn't realize. What did they admitted the other day that they accidentally sent 240 million or billion, I don't know, some enormous number.
The Pentagon can't pass an audit. The Pentagon can't pass an audit.
So like I said before, it's the point of it. It's like, how much money are you guys sending to places that you don't even know you're sending it? It's maybe some policy that happened 2 administrations ago that just keeps renewing and keeps direct depositing money into somebody's account. I don't know even how it works, but you could imagine that's what's happening. All this money going all over the place. We don't even know. Where's the accountability? And when you have it happen and it's going to, I think it's the Taliban that accidentally got $240 billion or something, or million, I don't know. Where else is it going to? Where else are these just accidental funds just ending up? And it's like, that's my money, bro.
Yeah, they're not going to my bank account, I can tell you that.
Yeah,
how many people
looking?
How many people do you know of that have seen what $1 million in a bag looks like?
Nobody I know.
But there are people out there that have seen that.
Some, I'm sure.
Like, what? How is this possible? Like, this came off of an airplane and it's got to be driven over here to be given to this person? That's bananas. Like, that doesn't even make sense right now. Like, how is that even a thing? But remember I talked earlier about the initial push for what the ultimate goal was, and then there's B, C, D, and ECHO, all these other plans laid out. Because of some people that are in, we'll use the word power again, in the government, in the COG, the company of the government, through various different sources, they're always working on other plans, other contingencies. There's other stuff that's out there that they gotta seed the grass. They gotta water the grass. Otherwise, they're not welcome there anymore. They're not able to come back anymore. You cut off a country's funding for stuff, you just pissed them off because they became used to the milk coming out of that tit kind of a thing, right? When have you ever given your kid less allowance?
Never.
Right?
Yeah.
It only goes up.
Only goes up.
So is it reasonable to expect that that's the same kind of condition? All a country or a faction or a group or a tribe of people, wherever they may be, is looking for is to just have the conversation and start getting that little briefcase of money. Because in a couple of years, it turns into a bag of money, and then it turns into a truck of money, then it turns into a plane of money, and then it turns into so much money they can't do it that way any longer, so they have to digitally transfer it to you through whatever mechanism necessary. That's a dangerous place to be. So what I hope happens is that not only is there a more fine-tuning of what the government actually needs to run, and the way that you can determine that, like with any business, is to determine what your costs are basis on what your returns are. that it does the same thing when it comes to international implication. It stops doing the free money to everybody else. It pisses me off when people in North Carolina are in a really bad way, and then 3 days later, I see a thing for another $67 million approved for Ukraine.
Yeah, and FEMA's out of money because they used it all on the border.
They used it on immigrants.
Which is
exactly.
Yeah, it couldn't have been the border because the border's
Not
secure.
the border, on immigrants.
They're given a
Yeah.
Chinese phone. They're given a bus ticket. They're given a court date that sometimes is between 1, 3, or 8 years to show up based on their claim of asylum with whatever it predicates to. And then they're kicked loose.
And then rent for 2 years.
And then they're given a card that has money that's put onto it that's to be utilized for shelter and food and discretionary purchases.
Which is smokes.
Whatever it is, it's
Mountain Dew.
whatever it is, that's not the way to do things. The three of us could not get in the car and drive to Puerto Penasco to Rocky Point right now and just stay. Couldn't, especially not speaking the language. Like my Spanish is, we'll find the bathroom. We'll get cold beers. Well, I can order food. You know what I mean? But it's having friends that work in law enforcement at a bunch of different levels. It's mind blowing to me that they're finding people that have multiple felony charges against them when they finally get caught, which means that their felony charges, they've been caught before. They just didn't go to court and they just bounce around the country doing bad stuff. Who've been in the country for, I think he was 11 or 13 years here and doesn't speak English. That's mind blowing to me. Right? That doesn't. I don't even know. My American brain doesn't even know how to register how that happens.
Yeah, I actually. So I was having this conversation with somebody, and they were like, "Well, we need immigrants, and we need." I'm like, "Look, man, I don't think most Americans have a problem with immigrants.
Agreed.
Just immigrants,
Legal immigrants.
right? My problem is whatever. Some of the ones that come across they're not ill-intentioned as far as like they're not trying to commit crimes. They just want a better life for their family. I dig that. I still do it legally, but my problem is you come here, like you had mentioned, if I just decided to up and go to Germany, better assimilate with the culture.
Right.
And learn how to speak the language.
Yeah.
Because real fast you're going to stick out.
I'm not saying that you have to, for instance, if a group of people come here from Mexico and they want to teach their kids. They have kids here. They want to teach their kids the language. I'm in on that. Keep your heritage. Keep your assimilate to our culture. We don't have to cater to you, right? You come here. You learn our culture. You learn to fit in with our culture. Keep your own at your house with your kids. Speak the language. Do whatever. But we have different populations. It's not just Hispanics, with different populations that are moving into these places, Minnesota, Michigan, and just taking over and basically going, yeah, this is us now. This is our culture. Yeah, this is what we do.
Hawaii. You see that.
No.
Yeah. You see it happening in London. You see it happening in Paris.
Yeah.
There are whole
Paris.
sections.
I take exception to that.
Dude.
I have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with somebody coming over here for a better life. That's why we're all here.
Yeah.
But there's a process.
Well, the great part about people that show up to the border that can openly tell a border agent, I'm here to work and send money back to Ecuador. They're like, cool. So you must know where you're going because you have a friend or a family member that's already here that has a job for you to be a drywaller or build a house or whatever the case may be. Let those people in. Absolutely, man. But as soon as they come in, they get a social security number. They're paying into the system. They're paying taxes. They're helping support those businesses to be equally competitive, as opposed to somebody who's going to get a drywall guy for X dollars cash under the table every day, underbid everybody that has the proper licenses, the permits, the parts that we have in place. And you talk about culture, and I had this discussion with some friends of the family because there are other people out there that think other than we do, but we have to do our due diligence to at least bridge the gap, explain a position, not argue it, back it up with some data if you need to, and just create a different perspective. If they're coming here to assimilate to culture, as you stated, the culture is very varied and wide because this country is made of immigrants. And the culture, in order to become a citizen, you have to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. You have to understand some of our history and independence, what happened during the Civil War, how this country operated during the First World War, and what we did to help out allies of ours. It's a test, and those people pour their heart and soul into learning that stuff to be able to take that test and pass it to become a U.S. citizen. but they're still free to worship whoever they want. They can still have their own holidays. They're free to start a business. They're free to work at a business. Our culture isn't so difficult and so different. So when I interact with people like, what's American culture? American culture is exactly that. It's our own short history to learn about and to be willing to understand that there are people here who think differently than you do when you came from a culture that mostly thinks the same way about a lot of things, and be willing to have neighbors in a community that they operate their families differently, but there's still common ground. And that common ground is that this country has a past and a history that's important just to know for relevance. And more importantly, this is a country of laws. And if you come to this country by starting off by breaking a law, you're already kind of behind the power curve as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I never really thought about it that way. But if you think about the culture of the United States, there's so many different cultures.
Yeah, and they're awesome.
And they're awesome, exactly. But there are a few threads that need to be understood. And that is like the founders, the Constitution, we are a nation of laws, and the threads that pop out through, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution itself, that is really our culture. You came here for that.
Right.
You came here because that works.
Yep.
So get on board with it.
Yep.
Go, speak your language.
100%.
That's fine. Obviously you should learn English. That is our
unofficial
country
language.
You should learn that. And you should be eager to learn that. And you should be eager, to speak English. But you can do most of what you did in your other country and have the benefits of the United States, but just get on board with just a few simple things. Don't bring that depressing dictatorship style government that you fled from here.
Yeah.
Embrace freedom, because that's why you're coming here. That's why we love this country. Embrace that freedom. Engage in it. Be a part of the democracy. Be a part of voting. I mean, once you get, are able to vote, be a part of that.
Yeah.
But don't ever, and you see this a lot. I feel like I see this a lot where people are bringing their own culture of dictatorship, of oppression to the United States. It's like, why? You came here for freedom.
Because maybe it's all they know.
It's probably exactly
They've been
what
conditioned that way. I have a brother who's married to a Filipino woman. Their culture is awesome. And Jesus, do they feed the hell out of you when you go and visit them. And for the most part, the food's legit. Like, I love it. The chicken's feet took a little getting used to, right? The oxtail, that's a little bit weird. But I dealt with it. I have another brother that's married to a Belgian. And her family is amazing. And when I talk to her family, because they have dual citizenship, and when they come over to visit, I'm like, so what's going on over there now, man? What's happening? And it's just immediately like face change, like, oh, fuck. Things have a real immigration problem. To your point, it's not that they refuse to acquiesce to all the benefits of being in Belgium, but they're using the benefits of all that Belgium can provide while bringing a ton of horrible shit with them to isolate themselves on purpose, to cast out anybody that tries to entertain a relationship with them, to help them better understand the places that they're moving into so they can actually become neighbors, and they can become, and let alone a society, but a community, because those are two different things. Yeah. And to get involved with sharing. And those people in Belgium are willing to bring on those cultures. They're willing to have those specific types of food stores or cultural events, and they're open to it. But what they're not open to, and one of the parts that aggravates me the most of what we have in this country with regards to people coming into the country, is the violence that they bring. If you bring violence into a place that is opening its doors to you, that is willing to bring you in to help lift you up for all the reasons that you wanted to come here, you have to be able to let go of all of that. That's how it was we were growing up. So being a gang member is all I know. Not here.
No.
And the government and the states have to be willing to put their foot down and go,
right,
not here. And not here means don't convict them and put them in prison for us to pay for it for 25 years.
Just turn them around. Make a big old U-turn.
Dude, it's convicted. It is fingerprint and iris. We know who you are. You are never allowed to come back under any circumstances. That's it. That was your one shot. And we call that out very quickly and very easily in our welcome to the United States kind of thing. This is what we put up with, and this is what we won't. Because if you and I go to Mexico and are accused of a crime, we're going to sit in a jail cell for God knows how long until our family's money can get the right people in place to either get us out or find a way to make that go away or make that shortened. But dude, other countries love persecuting Americans for stuff. That we do not tolerate drugs in Southeast Asia during the Golden Triangle. What? Like, you guys are the highway for heroin. Are you kidding me? And their prisons are full of people that have been caught or didn't have enough money to buy their way out. And that stuff's on the news, right? If you come here, you commit crimes, and you've not shown that you're a productive member of a society, let alone a community. You show that you're not a value add to the culture that we are creating or still creating. You got to go.
How come that is not just, that seems so common sense. How come that is not the sense that we get from the people in the United States, where every time there is a group of people who says, I don't want people that I don't know crossing our borders, we get a huge group of people saying that's racist. How did we get there? It would seem like you can make it a case like your house. You don't want to let people in your house you don't know. And that's the same with our country, because there's a lot of people in our country that could be hurt from you letting people in our country that we don't know. Mm-hmm. So you would think that as stewards of the country, the government, that they would have some kind of good system to let people in that we know that are going to be a net positive on the culture. Mm-hmm. How did we get to the point to where it's now just racist in general, like a general statement of racism, if you don't agree with just letting everybody who wants to come into the United States come in?
Because there's more money and more profit to be made by making the fix-it kits for what's happening than it is to stand up and spend the money on what it would cost to put those checks in place. That's it.
Where do they make their money? So there's money to be made.
There's money to be made. All the bus companies that are driving people around, all the people that have to be hired by the Border Patrol with, minimal skill sets, but they pass a background, go to an academy, put them on the border. That's going to be X dollars. Every one of those Border Patrol agents needs a vest, full uniform, full kit. They are paying into a pension now that's managed by market people that are managing all that piece.
Military industrial complex.
Dude, it's the MIC. Yeah. It's a MIC, but it's the PIC. It's the public industrial complex. And it's those other companies. What percentage of American prisons are privately owned right now?
I don't know.
Google it. It'll blow your mind.
I think it's probably...
Dude, it's majority. A shit ton. And they're all, because they're privately owned, they also then subcontract private businesses to do catering for the food, cleaning of the linens, the power, the security teams, all that stuff. So it's advantageous. And then at the same time, to your point earlier with the media, it's part of the PIC, the public, industrial complex. Let's get somebody to start stirring around and talking about not letting people hear as racist. You don't want to be a racist. Oh God, you get called a racist. And I think another thing too, side tangent, that people worry about, people call them way too much. You give weight to people that you don't know that call you a thing. I'm walking down the street with my wife and somebody calls me a racist. I don't care.
Yeah, but we've gone through a process. In 2012, when that started happening, before 2012, that didn't happen unless you were truly a racist.
Right,
but
and you deserved it.
11, 12, something like that started happening. And then everybody was offended. And now we're not offended anymore because it's a useless term. But it's like, how did...
devalued the word.
The word's totally devalued.
Yeah.
Hitler's totally devalued. Like, Nazi is... No one cares anymore. Like, you're not... I guess there are some people because apparently, the Harris campaign is still calling Trump a Nazi, and maybe some people are still buying that. I don't know. But I think we're really on the downward slide of those words, like, have been just totally, they just don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah. It's the word police thing. It becomes very unpopular. Then there's cancel culture and all the other stuff. I think
that's where the word still holds
some value.
The value is because, like you said, if you're just walking down the street with your wife, somebody drives by, racist, you're like, whatever, dude, cool.
Doesn't even matter.
But if you're, in business somewhere, we were talking on this podcast and somebody online goes, oh yeah, I know those guys, they're racist.
Yeah, you could be demonetized. Yeah,
oh,
that's
yeah,
true.
exactly.
Yeah.
With no factual basis to back it up, no actual stats, no actual interaction of, oh yeah, it's on video. Here's where this guy called me this specific word, and it's just they said the word, and now it's like now we sit here and we go shit.
Well, you don't even have to
man,
say the word. You just mention certain topics, and you get taken down from certain
and
platforms.
this, by the way, was put in place by the same people that said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black.
You know, we could fix all this though. Just three dudes talking in a room. Bring back dueling.
Dueling.
Dude, I love that.
We could bring back dueling. And I made a post on Instagram. That's the only social media that I have. I saw a video of a child in a stroller at an event that there were protesters and counter-protesters. You guys familiar with this video clip? Mm-mm. There's a woman who's yelling at the child.
Yes.
Like screaming in the kid's face.
Yeah.
And the dad reaches down and pulls his child from the stroller to get him away from this woman who is inches away at a high volume screaming at a child. The child is like, I don't even know what she was screaming about. I didn't even hear the depth of that. And the comment I made was, that got a gajillion likes in a very short period of time, was I quite succinctly stated, I'll read it to you.
Let's do it.
Because I think it's sometimes adding a little bit of levity to people's thought processes with regards to like what matters and what doesn't matter. I said, remember when everyone carried firearms openly and folks and strangers were a lot more polite to each other? Pepperidge Farm remembers. You know what I mean? Like,
what did the comment say?
oh, it just got tons of likes.
Tons of likes.
The response comments were been restricted.
Well, that's exactly part of it, right? Keyboard warriors. There's people say stuff without consequence now. If you're worried about getting smacked in the face, you'd be a lot more careful with what you type.
Right? Imagine if people that came to this country knew that they were welcomed because they were going to be an asset to the productivity, the growth, and the continued positive change that the country can provide. But they also knew that the first time you went into a women's bathroom following a child as a grown man, that you could expect to come out of that bathroom and have the shit beaten out of you by a crowd of other men.
Yeah.
That were all going to dissipate. And nobody filmed it. Nobody put it on their phone. Nobody reported it. It was just, there's a dude who's got the shit beat out of him. Let's go to the video. Oh yeah, he went in the women's bathroom following that kid. And then the dad went in there.
Yeah. Case closed.
And the guy came flying out, and then a bunch of dudes beat the shit out of him. You know what I mean?
This is an open shut case. Everything's
Yeah,
we're not going to press
for me,
charges.
it's open and shut.
Yeah,
like,
right.
dude, no one's following your kid into the bathroom if I'm hanging out with your family. It's not going to happen. And Americans have been exposed to so much tremendous violence publicly since World War II, even World War I, right? Through wars and conflict, that there's an apprehension to violence to a degree with everybody. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the one out there waving the nuke everybody flag. That's not my my position at all. But when you talk about accountability and consequences, when you are able to embrace the mindset that in order to stop somebody from doing something, you cannot rise to their level, you have to go above their level in order to stop it, because then it gives a chance for learning to occur. That tends to indicate and tends to sway people's understanding of how things really are. And it can actually become a change for them to where they realize and recognize, well, I can't do that because I did that and
there's consequence.
it really hurt.
Yeah.
Yep.
Financially or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you bring up a good point about men going into women's bathrooms, and it just really makes me think of how far we've come in 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
On how much our ideas and the social norms have changed. There are people that are out there that'll say men can get pregnant. There's men emojis, pregnant emojis.
What?
You've never seen this? Yeah. Apple has an emoji that has a pregnant man. We don't know what the difference between a man and a woman is. I mean,
I do. Like, I know.
Yeah.
Right.
But are you saying societally we don't know the difference?
Society, yes. I'm just saying.
Question, Matt Walsh has that, and he goes
What is
around,
a
hey, what's the
woman?
difference between Matt?
They can't answer these questions. And it's like, how did we become so broken so quickly? And that's why I go back to like, do we really have to break the machine? Can we really come back from Like, what is more fundamental than man and woman?
Right.
What is more fundamental than that? And if we don't know the answer to that,
Right.
we are, I don't know, I think we might be too far gone.
Big problems. And
And it's only a small proportion. I'm not saying it's everybody. And, maybe it's 25%, maybe it's 20. They're loud. Whatever percentage they are, they're loud. But, man, it creeped into our government when this most recent, I think her last name's Jackson, the Supreme Court nominee, now is a judge, Sheila Jackson Lee. They asked her right in Congress when they were doing her acceptance, when they were going through that thing that they do where
the
they
vetting piece, where they all get the senators get a chance to talk to her.
They asked her, can she define a woman? She said she's not a biologist.
Get out.
That's what I would like to say. She's obviously smart. Like, nothing against her.
Great.
She's obviously smart, but you have been captured. You've been captured by this culture of wokeness, and now you're going to be one of the 9 most important people in this country.
Yeah.
That is, you're not just some blue-haired, chubby girl from New York City. You are one of the 9 most important people in the United States.
Yeah, get out.
And now, you're telling me that you're not a biologist and you can't define what a woman is.
And so then I would tag that person's comments to that, the response that she had, to someone else's political legacy and go, this is the person that you signed the document on. And God save us if it was 7 people making the decision and 7 of them said she's good to go. That's insane, man. And that accountability needs to ring clear. It needs to go up and go, look, that's not, I'm actually getting agitated. That's not, that's not okay.
Yeah.
We can agree that I think that wall is dark blue and you say, actually the color is blah, 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 blah. I'm like, cool, man, but it's still blue, right? I'm like, yeah, it's still blue. Cool. Mm-hmm. I am not okay with going, that wall's blue. And you go, that wall is white, because I'm thinking, shit, I trust Ryan. Clearly I'm headed to the eye doctor after I leave this place. There needs to be that level. And if things have to happen where accountability is not just suggested, but it is carried out, then that's what it is, man. And it sucks. But you can't have people that can't understand the differences between it.
Yeah, I mean, it used to literally be, all right, man, hey, 3 p.m. flagpole. After school.
Yeah.
And we had less problems.
That's
We're
right.
dueling.
We had less problems.
All those that believe that she is right, when she didn't answer the question either, she answered it with a rhetorical, non-committed question,
right,
which is a sign of intelligence, which is also equally terrifying, because this person's going to be looking at casework that has been waiting for years to get on a docket, to get to the highest court in the land to make a decision. And the law... People always say the law is very black and white. No, there's the spirit of the law and there's the intent of the law, right? And when the law is written in certain spaces and ways, keep in mind some of those laws were written 10, 20, 30, dozens, hundreds of years ago that haven't been amended or changed. To have someone sit there and say, well, I'm not a biologist, so I can't answer the question. Okay, cool. Are you a race car driver? I'm not. So if I put orange juice in the car instead of gasoline, can I still race the car? Well, I'm not a race car driver.
I don't know.
Common sense.
Right.
It's just the common sense of it. It just
you're
doesn't
not qualified to be here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you just got to go, man. You're supposed to be up there with other people to make those decisions.
But she's not. She's there.
It's terrifying.
She got accepted, and the media covers it up. They don't want to report that type of stuff. As a matter of fact, they either agree with it or they're just going along with it because, again, power, money, whatever it is. And she's there, and she'll be there for a long time. And who knows, maybe it's a fad. I will say that it could be possible that the people on the far left who they don't know the difference between a man and a woman, maybe they'll come around. Well, maybe they'll just be so awesome, like, hey guys, this was a cool experiment, but
didn't work out so good.
Didn't work out. It's not true.
Well, and I had this discussion with somebody else in a different line of work, and the reality is it hasn't gotten as bad as it could get. Right? There's always the memes. Hey man, you think it's bad now? It's about to get a lot worse. It can always get worse. Is that essentially because of who we are in this country and who this country is on the planet, everybody here is still really, really comfortable. Dude, the lights are on, bro. That's legit. I go to use your head or use your bathroom and I flush the toilet, all the stuff goes away. That's pretty cool. I picked up this bottle of water and added some stuff to it and I'm enjoying it. Like, there are a lot of places on this planet where that doesn't exist. And the accountability piece and getting people to realize and recognize that you have to make some changes is not until they get uncomfortable, right? If you've ever maxed out a credit card before and gone to pay for something and it goes, burp, uh-oh, You now have some pain has been given to you, either mentally, emotionally, whatever. You go, that's not good. I got to really work on this. And you force that change yourself. There's nobody forcing the change. So as much as you guys can get demonetized by having certain guests say certain things, imagine if we fact check the news.
Well, you can't because you're racist.
Well, again, such a racist. I love it. My wife, we have these discussions about politics and we see the current condition of the country, and she's probably one of the most intelligent people I know. So I'm super stoked that I got a chance to marry her, and I've been fooling her this whole time. She kept seeing all this Project 2025 stuff, and she works in a space where she is, most of her coworkers and the people she interacts with lean more liberal. They're more Democrat. They lean more liberal because they're in education. And there are some people in there who are middle or they are left-leaning conservatives, but there's a decent blend, but for the most part, it leans one direction. And she was asking me, she goes, what do you know about this Project 2025 thing? I'm like, and I know about it. And I was like, why are you asking? She goes, because Trump is being aligned with Project 2025, like all over the place. I was like, cool. So you got some homework to do. And I know she's good at homework because she's in her doctoral program right now. She says, what do you mean? I was like, I don't want you to hear it from me. I want you to look at it and determine what you can find that's out there if you're willing to dive deep enough. She came back like an hour later and she was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. I'm like, what'd you find out? She goes, he has nothing to do with any of that. All that stuff has been created by other groups and people and think tanks to come up with assimilated, constructive pseudo plans. Remember plan A, B, C, and D of what it would look like if there was a restructuring or a change to be made. That is it's through a very specific style of lens. And ironically, Trump isn't in any of it. And if you look at it and go to find, where did Trump say this? Dude, look at the information. He didn't.
Well, if you know Trump does what he wants to do.
Exactly.
No one is going to push an agenda on him. So that's number one.
It's going to be like, this is what we came up with. And Trump said it was cool.
Like, yeah, sure.
Trump said, yeah, sure, it was cool. And a handshake as he was passing off for the next photo op.
I have to mention, I follow Eric Swalwell on Instagram, and he's going through his
that
25.
Dude is amazing, dude.
I didn't know how dumb he was until I started. Yeah. Like this guy, he is relentless. 25 days of Project 2025. Yeah. They're so dumb. I'm just like,
how?
This is the dumbest
how
thing.
How does he have his podium?
And it's clearly a lot. It's clearly he has to know that Trump is not. Trump doesn't talk about it. Trump didn't even know about it.
Right.
But they're so partisan. They don't care. They don't care if it's true or not. This is I don't know if he's still a congressman or senator. I don't know.
I hope not.
I think he was. Which he should be in jail for the whole Chinese spy
thing, right? And
look at the committees he sat on. Like, bro. It's
there was something else. I don't know if it was Project 2025, but you can easily YouTube it where Ben Shapiro just dominates him in a.
He's not a smart man. Swalwell is not.
But it's one of those things where he thinks he has the upper hand, and it's a whole committee. You know, all the congressmen are sitting up there, and it's in D.C. and Ben Shapiro's just sitting like this the whole time, and he's asking him a question. He goes, "Yeah, I can't speak to that because of this." He goes, "But so what you're saying is?" He goes, "I'm not saying just absolutely eating his lunch," and he's like, he just can't seem to get like. Well, let me rephrase the question because you can rephrase it however you want. Fact is, this is the.
I'm a Jew, and I can't answer that because of the way I think of this particular instance because I'm a Jew.
Yeah, he just owned him, and I'm like, God, you're stupid.
Well, I mean, there are some smart Democrats for sure. I pay attention to Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro is a smart man. I don't agree with him on a lot of things. He's a center of the road Democrat. There's some things he's done recently that were ridiculous. He signed a bomb. Did you see that? He signed a missile. So they had Zelensky in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, they went to the ordnance factory.
Yeah, they went to the ordnance factory, and he took a picture, put it on his social media page, and he was signing a bomb. Even the Democrats who follow him, like, that's not a good look. He got so much hate for it. But he's a smart. But obviously people do stupid stuff. But overall, he's a smart man. Eric Swalwell, you can just tell he's not a smart man. Eric Swalwell will do whatever it takes to be a part of the party and whatever the party asks him to do. He is a true partisan and a low IQ person. So I just think it's just interesting how we have politicians who they're not intelligent. They're not there to try to make the country better. They're just there for the party. I mean, this is it's kind of an Orwellian idea.
Props. They're just props.
This is the same reason why Kirsten Sinema's not running again.
Yeah, it's true.
At first, when she ran, I was like, man, I don't like this platform. I don't like. And then and I'm not saying I'm a huge fan and willing to vote for her, but I came to have a lot of respect for her by the way she handled herself. And, when the Democrats were like, this is what we're doing. And she went,
no,
nah, that's not good for Arizona. We're not doing that. I'm not voting for that. And I was like, whoa, did you just not toe the party line? Did you just just think independently?
And then demonetize her.
Yeah.
You can't do that on the Democratic Party. They will let you have it. They did it to Tulsi.
Yep.
They did it to RFK Jr. for sure.
Jesus.
I mean, they just destroyed him.
Never had security detail.
No. Last question.
Yeah.
What do you think about the election? Who's going to win?
I'll tell you, and I'll tell you why I think that. I think Trump's going to win. Because I don't believe our media. I don't believe a lot of the publications that are out there. There's a benefit to constantly be saying it's neck and neck as an attempt to attract people. People inherently want to be on the winning team. They want to be a part of success. Some people feel they want to be a part of progress. And when you tell somebody that it's neck and neck, these guys they're right next to each other, man, you could have the deciding vote. Your family, if you can convince your friends to come on over, you could be a part of that. Whether or not you believe in the whole security of the election thing, which is another conversation. I'll tell you why, because I know people that when it comes to things that they hold dear to themselves, like money influences people, money makes people make decisions, and risk. And when people risk certain things to make money, they do it with gathering as much information as humanly or technologically possible. I would urge anybody that's listening to this podcast, whether it's before or after the election occurs, is to do some research and discover what the Vegas odds are at right now. Now, apparently it's illegal to vote as an American on the presidential election, but there are other sites that are not in the United States that don't have to abide by those rules, and through various pass-throughs, it's still something that you can do. I looked at the numbers 2 nights ago, and Trump was at 68% of the vote.
Vegas is usually pretty good.
Vegas is really good, dude. There's whole channels that look at sports after the fact, like the spread was 3, and all of a sudden, they're ahead by 26 points, and like 3 penalty calls, 3 first downs, and a touchdown later, and what the fuck? Like Vegas was right. It's 3.5 points. So I would urge people to start looking for yourself, become more educated, understand where the news comes from. I look at news from like 9 different outlets around the planet to understand perspective on things, to see what's actually happening in certain environments. And if you look at what the people that are in charge of mitigating risk for profit, money is a big deal for them. They want to be right. They're willing to let people bet against and for it. I think that it'd be interesting to see that the polls are nowhere near what they're being described as.
Do you think bringing on, obviously you got a guy like Elon, he's got some tech capabilities. Do you think, obviously knowing what happened last time, whether you believe there was massive amounts of fraud or minor amounts or no amounts, do you think they're able to mitigate that this time around?
No, because I don't, because there are pieces and parts that are in play that are coming at country level from a perspective electronically and digitally to manipulate information and data. And as you guys well know, as you're in the tech space with regards to, setting up this even just this facility and what's required when things go down and things go up and how things get fixed. That is one of the fastest evolving things that are out there, is people breaking each other's codes and sharing misinformation and planting programs and seeds and all kinds of stuff. I don't think that Elon should be seen as some kind of a godsend to help fix that, because then we have to believe Elon. I don't have a reason not to believe Elon, but I'm real hesitant and cautious to believe one person that shows up and says, here's what actually happened. Because I start questioning, like, what perspective does he have? Why is it beneficial for him to stir and create this dissent and create this? Is this what's going to be that pushes things over, as opposed to people just getting out there, man, and voting? And if they get out there and they vote and it doesn't go the way that they voted, they have to be respectful of the process, even if the process we can determine after investigations is broken. because we have an obligation as a people, as a citizenry, to tell our government we're not happy with it, we're not putting up with it. You need to make some changes.
Chris Cooke, thanks for being here, buddy.
Hey, man.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate
It's cool.
your time. Thank you.
Thanks, bro.